You know, honestly, I'm kind of surprised at what's been happening over the last few months with Nintendo fans. Many Nintendo fans are starting to realize that Nintendo is not this amazing saintly corporation that many of them believe Nintendo actually is. Here's the thing with Nintendo. They've been doing a lot of real stupid decisions that are actually driving many of their fans crazy. For example, Amiibos instead of making more games. And not only that, but the fact that Amiibos have been a train wreck. Like, instead of making new games, Nintendo's been making these toys for kids. And not only that, but many of the ones that people online want are in short supply and they're always out of stock everywhere. Like, for example, the Wii Fit Trainer Amiibo, or the Villager Amiibo, or the Marth Amiibo. Those have been well known for supply issues, as many stores only get sent, like, what, 3 or 4 of them at a time. I mean, I actually asked the Toys R Us employee about this, and he said that stores were only getting 3 or 4 Amiibos at once. And the funny thing is, these are all for kids' toys. These aren't even for something big like video games. And let's not forget how there were some supply issues with the new 3DS, how Nintendo has discontinued many of the older 3DS games such as Kid Icarus Uprising and Ocarina of Time 3D, and of course the whole thing with the GameCube adapters being in such short supply that third parties actually cloned them, and for a while those were actually selling more than the official Nintendo GameCube adapters. And then the Wii U went 6 months without having any big games. But then it gets better, because when the big game finally comes out, it's missing tons of features, from voice chat, to scoreboards in game, to changing your class, to the ability to change, let's just say, your sensitivity and other similar settings while you're in the game. You couldn't even do that. And of course the game also lacked map voting, had maps limited so you could only play certain maps while the game was going, and of course let's not forget how this game also had where they actually had disc lock content and DLC to come after the game was already out. But the thing that's happening right now that's really making me think that people are starting to catch on to what Nintendo is doing is the whole Nintendo E3 2015. Now, it's been a disaster all around, from the Nintendo World Championships featuring people who couldn't play the games, and even though these are grown adults, they still were terrible at the games, and of course the little kids narrating the whole thing where, I mean, the Splatoon part, you had that little kid narrating, it was like he was reading off a teleprompter. It was so cringeworthy and laughable at the same time. And let's not forget the announcements themselves, especially the Metroid announcement, which was so controversial that there's actually a petition to get the game cancelled, along with yellow journalists and Nintendo-only fan sites and hardcore Nintendo fans defending this. I mean, while a lot of Nintendo fans are against this, judging by the huge dislike ratio on the gameplay trailer, there are lots of people out there still trying to defend this, mainly yellow journalists and, like I said, Nintendo-only websites and YouTube channels. Now, besides this Metroid Prime branded Four Swords type game, you also had an Animal Crossing Mario Party game with Amiibos. Some Chibi Robo 2D platformer, because after all, Chibi Robo is totally a big intellectual property from Nintendo. And of course, you also had other big announcements, such as more gameplay footage of games that still aren't out yet and have been shown at several E3s before. And Shin Megami Tensei X Fire Emblem, which is finally turned into Fire Emblem Shin Megami Tensei Waifu Simulator 420, which might as well have a featuring Neptune from Hyperdimension Neptunia sticker on the box, just like Nocturne did in Europe with Dante from Devil May Cry. And let's not forget that new Star Fox game, which already features gamepad control gimmicks, where you have to look at both screens to play the game, and which a GameSpot reviewer criticized, saying that it was too awkward and stuff like that, because he couldn't even play the game right even after trying to look at both the controllers at once. And a Nintendo employee actually admitted at the conference that other people were having trouble getting used to the controls, which is funny because Nintendo is supposed to be that pick up and play gaming company and not struggle with the controls until you can finally play the game gaming company. I mean, this is the same Nintendo that casualized themselves in 2007 to pander to both kids and old people, which worked for a while because Nintendo systems were everywhere in news reports showing old grandmothers and grandfathers playing DS's and Wii's, mainly games like Brain Age and Wii Sports, but still. But here's the thing. At this point, a lot of what Nintendo's doing is getting into more and more criticism as more and more people start to catch on to what Nintendo actually thinks of their fans. And especially when you see stuff such as the whole Metroid thing, where people are just criticizing it. Now, maybe if Nintendo slapped a different logo on it, people would think it's the greatest thing to slice bread. Just look at Splatoon. But here's the thing. Nintendo is practically abusing and pissing off all their fans. Just look at the reaction to the E3 and how much many of the hardcore Nintendo-only channels and yellow journalists are damage controlling it. That's all I have to say. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.